Story time, and this is a really freaky story, and I've tried to share it before on TikTok, but after I shared it, some really weird things started happening to me, so I deleted it. But I'm gonna try again. Everyone's name has been changed just for safety reasons. But okay, here goes. Again, it's really freaky. Be ready. 2 years ago, my friend named Ashley was in London for a work thing. She normally lives in a different country, but so she was in London for a work thing, and so I told her that she could stay with me. This one night, Ashley decided to meet up with her friend John, who she hadn't seen in a few years, because John also lived in London. So Ashley and John went for dinner. At dinner, everything was fine, everything was completely normal, and halfway through, Ashley went to the bathroom. When she came back from the bathroom, John started acting really, really weird, and he was like, Ashley, we have to leave right now, we have to go. And she was like, what are you talking about? We haven't even finished our food, are you okay? And he was like, no, we just have to go. I already paid, it's fine, let's just go, please, let's go. So they leave the restaurant, and then they're walking down the street, and John started telling Ashley, for the past 8 months, I've been followed, and I'm still being followed, and that's why we had to leave the restaurant, because there are people there that were watching us, and my life is in danger, and now I think that your life is in danger too. I have to do part two. Part two. So John and Ashley are walking down the street, and he's telling her, like, I needed to tell you because I think your life might be in danger now too, because you just hung out with me, and I just needed you to know, like, just in case. So Ashley ended up coming back to my place after that whole thing happened, and she told me what happened because she was genuinely freaked out. And we couldn't figure out whether John was just mentally unstable or whether this was actually true, because he was fine up until that halfway point at dinner, so we couldn't figure it out. So then what we decided to do is call Ashley's brother Tom, because Tom also knew John, so we wanted to get his opinion on it, like what he thought was going on, whether John was okay or whether there was something going on. So we decided to call John through Ashley's phone, so we do a FaceTime audio call. And when we call, a woman answered the phone, and she was like, wait, Ashley, hold on 1 second. Ashley, don't hang up the phone, Ashley, 1 second. So Ashley then hung up the phone, and I was like, that didn't sound like your brother. And she was like, I don't know who that was. I have to do a part three. So we were really freaked out because we were like, who answered that phone call? Because Ashley did not recognize that voice. So what we decided to do was contact Tom through my phone. So we contacted Tom, and he was like, no, my phone didn't ring. I don't know what you're talking about. And we were like, well, does someone have access to your iCloud? Like, could someone have signed in? And he was like, no one has my password. And we were like, well, is your computer on somewhere? And like someone answered it from your computer because it rang on your computer. He was like, no, my computer's off. I don't know what you're talking about. So Tom then looked at his phone log on his phone, and it said, FaceTime audio call answered on another device. So someone had intercepted that call, basically. So what we think happened is what John was saying was true, and these people didn't want Ashley to tell Tom what happened, so they intercepted the call. That's the only explanation that we have, because we don't know who else answered this phone call. I mean, it could be a coincidence, but what are the odds that this one time that we called Tom, someone else picks up? And how did they know Ashley's name? They knew it was, they kept saying, Ashley, hold on. Part 4. So that woman who intercepted that phone call knew Ashley's name, and she kept saying, Ashley, hold on, Ashley, don't hang up the phone, Ashley, 1 second. So like, it's as if they were trying to keep Ashley on the phone to track her location. Maybe, I don't know, it was just really weird. But what's very, very weird on top of all of this is I shared this story on TikTok in August. And the day that I shared it, I got an Instagram friend request from Ashley's mom. But the thing is, I was already friends with Ashley's mom on Instagram. This was a second account. And the second account messaged me saying, hey, what are you up to? So I was like, that's weird. Let me just message Ashley and like ask her if her mom made a second Instagram account. So I messaged Ashley, and she was like, no, that's an imposter account. That's not my mom. What are the odds that the day I shared that story on TikTok, there was a fake Instagram account from her mom? Also, her mom her mom has 100 followers on Instagram. Why would someone pretend to be her? It's not like she's a celebrity and there's like imposters. It's just really weird. Story time, and this is actually my mom's story. When my mom was 15, she was a boarding school student, except her school wasn't only a boarding school, it was also a daytime school. So students could choose to either be a boarding school student or a daytime school student. This one night, my mom, her boarding school friend, and their daytime school friend were hanging out, and around 7 p.m. the daytime school friend wanted to go home. Back then, cell phones weren't a thing, obviously, so the three of them had to leave campus to go to a phone booth to call a cab for her. So they leave the school and they walk alongside it and past a forest, because right next to the school was a forest, and as they're walking, a man that they don't recognize passes them. Then a few seconds later, a girl that they do recognize who went to the school also passes them, so they say hi to her and they keep walking to the phone booth. Eventually, they reach the phone booth and they call a cab, and as they're waiting for a cab, suddenly, they hear a girl screaming and a bunch of leaves rustling. So they're like, oh my god, what is happening? Then a few seconds later, the guy that had passed them suddenly runs past them really, really fast. I have to do part 2. Part 2. So the guy ran past them just as the cab arrived. So my mom and her boarding school friend put their daytime school friend into the cab, and the two of them walked back towards the forest to see if something happened.
but no one was there. So the two of them then walked back to campus and went to the cafeteria because it was dinner time. And in the cafeteria, they saw the girl that had passed them just sitting at a table crying. So they went up to her to ask if she was okay. And when they went up to her, they saw that she had a knife mark on her neck and a knife mark on her wrist. So they were like, oh my God, we have to take her to the principal. They take the girl, bring her to the principal, and she tells them what happened. And the principal calls the cops and they take all of their statements. Apparently, the guy had grabbed the girl, taken her into the forest, and held a knife to her neck and told her to be quiet. But because the girl knew that my mom and her friends were nearby, she started screaming and wouldn't stop screaming. That's why the guy let her go and ran off. Eventually, the guy ended up being arrested and put in jail for having raped girls as young as 7 years old. Story time, and this is Claire's story. I also have to give a trigger warning for sexual assault for this one. So, when Claire was in college, she got into a fight with her roommates one day, and that night she went to a party in the apartment building that was next to hers. Unfortunately, when she was at that party, she lost her keys. So when she went back to her building, she knocked on her door, hoping that her roommates, who she was in a fight with, would open the door. But they didn't. Luckily though, her neighbor Jack heard her knocking, so he opened his door and he was like, "How are you, okay?" And Claire explained the situation to him. Jack was really nice. He was like, "Well, you're welcome to stay on my couch if you want." And so Claire said yes. Jack wasn't a stranger. Claire knew him really well. Her and her roommates hung out with him all the time, so she felt safe enough to go there. When she was in his apartment, Jack was really, really nice. He ordered her some food. He made the sofa bed for her. Like, he was just honestly really nice about everything. I have to do part 2. Part 2, and trigger warning for sexual assault. So Jack actually also had his friend from home who was visiting him, who was staying with him. So Claire was going to have to share the living room with that friend. Claire fell asleep, and a little while after, she woke up with her pants off and something inside of her. She asked the friend what he was doing, and he told her to go back to sleep. She got up, went to Jack's room, locked the door, and slept on the floor. The next day, Claire told her roommates what happened, but they didn't believe her. And they kept hanging out with Jack, even when that friend was there. And eventually, they ended up exiling Claire from the group because she was problematic. There are a lot of things that Claire could raise awareness about in this video, but what she wants to raise awareness about is validating people's stories. A few years ago, sexual assault wasn't as talked about. I have to do a part 3. Please listen to part 3, it's important. Part 3. So a few years ago, sexual assault wasn't as talked about, and it wasn't as understood. So a lot of people didn't believe some of these stories. So if you're one of those people who didn't believe someone's story back then, it's okay. But you know better now. So reach out to that person and validate their story. Even if what happened was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even if you're friends now, even if it seems like all of you have moved on from it, Claire guarantees that that betrayal is still inside of them. So you reaching out and validating their story will do a lot.